Can't wait to talk Texas football with the Texas Homer right here on YouTube. Just look it up right there, and you can catch all of his breakdowns. How's it going today, man?
Going well, man. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I look forward to these segments because you give a breakdown on the personnel, and that's what I'm always looking for, and you do a nice job. So, again, everybody get on over to Texas Homer right here on YouTube. So the spring game was a couple weeks ago, actually just last weekend, correct?
Yep.
Yes. So let's get the lowdown on this. Everybody wants to start at quarterback. You replace a Texas legend. We've got Hudson Card, who might be in the mix with Casey Thompson, and we all got to see Casey Thompson, at least the nation, more so than just Big 12 fans in that bowl game, and made some impressive throws. So your thoughts about what they displayed on that final day of the spring season?
I mean, a majority, the quarterbacks had a rough go of it, just with offensive line stuff. I think there was about 8 total sacks. So a lot of the times they weren't able to even get, we couldn't really grade them on some things because they were running a little bit. But we had Casey Thompson, he was running with the number ones, and he was playing against the number 1 defense. And then we had Hudson Card, who was running with the number 2 offense against the number 2 defense. And they had to stay separate the whole time, but both of them played into the fourth quarters, which was interesting and showed me that Sark is really trying to give both of these quarterbacks exhibitions to show what they can do. And I think with my notes, I think it was Casey had about 5.5 yards per attempt, and Hudson Card was in the 7 yards per attempt, but Casey had almost double of the attempts as Card. So you definitely got to see Casey throw the ball more. And he made some really nice throws. There were some really nice zone throws, particularly to Jordan Whittington. And Casey does really well when he rolls out to his right. And he did a lot where he just right in the breadbasket, man, right over a couple defenders perfectly in the zone. Really beautiful balls. And then Card had the only touchdown of the game with a really nice anticipation throw where our number 1 receiver, Marcus Washington, on the play was completely covered. I mean, completely. And Card threw it way before his break. I mean, the ball was, I do a breakdown on it. The ball was halfway to Washington before he even turned around. And so that was a really nice play, but we really struggled with the quarterbacks in the red zone. Anytime the field kind of got condensed, we had a little bit of trouble. But I think Sark was really intelligent on how he structured this spring game. He wants this battle to continue through the summer and the fall, and he made sure of that. By never playing Hudson with the ones, we can't really compare apples to apples there. So the debate continues. I know what I think, but the opposite of what I think could also be argued. So this is why Sark was smart, and he had a good decision with our quarterbacks. They both did a lot of good things, and they both did a lot of bad things. So it's going to take some coaching, but I think either way we end up, we're going to be all right at quarterback.
If you contrast these guys, are they pretty similar, or do you think that their skill sets are just a lot different, and where they rate right now in different categories if you go mobility, arm strength, leadership on down the line?
I would say, yeah, they are different. Casey Thompson is more mobile. He's more than quarterback mobile. Like Casey can go pick you up, a first down, and he looks good doing it. Card is mobile. He's pocket mobile. So he's mobile for a quarterback. He can spin out. He can do all of that. So don't think Card's slow. But if it comes into who's more dynamic running the ball, it's absolutely Casey. And that's why Tom Herman's previous offense worked really well for Casey, because it was more of a zone read offense. Hudson Card definitely has the better arm, both in strength and accuracy. He's really good on RPOs, or little quick things over the middle. That takes speed and accuracy. He can get the ball there. And then as far as leadership, I would have to go with Casey. Just watching him interview, after practice, he feels like the quarterback. He presents himself like the quarterback. There was a story where when Sark got hired, first thing Casey did was get his number to call him and ask for the playbook. Little psychological things like that do give you an edge. And so he's making smart choices like that. So I would say Card is, the young Jedi that everyone's keeping an eye on, and they know that he'll keep rising through the ranks. It's just, is it this year or next year for Card? That's the big question. But as far as mobility and leadership, that will go to Thompson. As far as being able to make every throw on the field, that will go to Hudson Card. And that's what makes this a really interesting battle.
Talking Texas football here at the Voice of College Football. Please like the videos, share the videos out on social media. So if you enjoy the content, others will as well that have no idea that Texas Homer exists or that we're here talking college football every day. So share the videos out on social media and please subscribe. Head on over to Texas Homer and check out his work right there. You get a slice here, but there's more to dive into, much more on over there. People across the nation, of course, excited about Bijan Robinson, but there's more to the Texas backfield than just Bijan.
Absolutely. Bijan looked awesome in the spring game. He made an insane cut that I was trying to watch the tape so I could pick on the defense and see where they made a mistake, and they didn't. It was Bijan's cut was that impressive where I was like, there's nothing to coach you up on, man. You ran into Bijan. And you'll see, go look for that highlight. He cuts so hard that his arm touches the ground. He plants on his arm, turns, and then scores a touchdown. It was just stuff like that where you're like, wow. But we also have Rashawn Johnson, who's number 2. He came in as a quarterback for us, and our RB room was decimated, and he stepped up. And the fans love Rashawn, and he's a bruiser, man. He'll run hard. He'll run at people. He's not as natural as Bijan, but no one really is. But he's good when he hits his hole, and he'll fight for your third downs. His mindset's probably one of the strongest on the team. And then the exciting thing at running back was Gabe Watson. So he transferred in either last year, I believe last year he transferred in, and I hadn't really seen him. I've only seen him in practice tape, and he's scary. He's like 230 pounds, big kid. He has some movement to him. He was making cuts that I was super surprised. I thought he was just going to run down like a boulder, but he's a big kid. He was sharp. He really helped offense. He understood his lanes. I was really impressed with him. If I'm talking about like an offensive standout from the spring game, I would have to give it to Gabe Watson. And then, of course, our recruiting looks good there too in the next 2 years. So running back is really going to be a big strength for us, and it's going to be a run-focused team. Everything's going to kind of go through our run offense.
As you know, at times people look at the offensive line and just think, okay, let's evaluate the offensive line. Is it a good one or a bad one? And that's the end of the story. Well, they've got 2 basic functions that they serve, and each offensive lineman and together as a group, they could be complete mashers when it comes to the ground game and really struggle in backpedaling and setting up and coordinating against a pass rush. So you got the run game blocking, and then you get pass pro. Your thoughts about how the offensive line stacks up?
So our first offensive line, Hudson Card's offensive line, it was not ideal. There was a lot of missed assignments there. But as far as our number 1 guys in the run game, they looked great. Angle out, pulling on power plays and stuff like that. They knew their assignments. They were mean. Our defensive line is also very talented. And so they were going hard against those guys. They looked awesome on runs. We were doing power. We were doing counter. Inside zone, outside zone. So we were able to kind of do everything that we wanted to do there. And every run play, I really liked it. They were getting penetration. They were mean. When they were pulling, they were getting their guys. Now, as far as pass pro, that was a little bit of a different story, right? So Sark's not a huge into drop back passing. There's normally some play action element or an RPO element, but there were a few just drop back passes, and I was always very keyed in to watch those. And we had a little trouble there. Of course, Coach K's defense is tricky. He's going to always loop and stunt people, so you always have to be ready for that. But we got beat a couple times on the edge, which is to be expected. Christian Jones at left tackle now is a newer thing. Andre Carrick is still growing. He's a talented player. And so I expected them to get beat a couple times, but they're improving. And there were good things that you saw there too. So luckily, they're going to get a whole summer with Flood. I've seen some of Flood's teaching. I just really like his style and how he's going to coach these guys up. So I'm really not worried there. But if we were going to say, what are we better at, running or pass blocking, I would absolutely say we're a run team first.
And to round out the offense, Joshua Moore's back at wide receiver. A tremendous signing coming in from Michigan. Xavier Worthy, who was a prime candidate to go to Alabama, chose Michigan, and he's headed your way later. But for this current group, let's start with Joshua Moore and just your rundown at wide receiver.
Yeah, so wide receiver totally. Joshua Moore, he got back into it later in the game. He had that play action drop on the first drive, I believe, that, hurt Casey. Casey needed a touchdown, and that was his touchdown. And he threw a nice one, and Josh, when he hit the ground, dropped it. And it was a hard fall, man. He caught that ball up in the air, and he turned sideways and landed on his back. So I can see how that drop occurred. But that Josh really picked it up later on. The ones that I was more keyed into are definitely Jordan Whittington, just because you've been hearing how his spring is gone. And he was relevant in the game. He caught some balls for Casey. He didn't take over how I thought potentially they would try to force him to with play calls. So we'll have to see kind of more how they use him in an actual game. And then Troy O'Meary was out there as well. And that's the young X receiver that made a lot of noise in spring last year. He made some, there's like some sneaky footage that they filmed off the computer of what he was doing in spring. And you can see what he did. It was really nuts. And he got injured, hurt his knee, and now he's coming back. So he was in a black jersey, so they couldn't hit him. And they did target him several times. Casey had a little bit of trouble getting it to him, but there was one that O'Meary caught over the middle that you're like, okay, you can just kind of see it with him. He's your traditional X. He looks great. He's tall, athletic. And another thing I noticed about him that I focus on, the psychology part, is he was constantly running over his teammates and talking to them and trying to say good job and picking them up and stuff like that. So I was like, that's very important for his talent level to show that leadership. And even though he's young, he's kind of taking his spot there. So wide receiver definitely needs a little bit of work. We need speed there is the big thing. And that's why Xavier Worthy was a great addition for us. But like I said, wide receiver, especially Sark's scheme and how he uses them, he's having a little bit of trouble right there that he's kind of expressed in some pressers. So we'll see. There's always kind of that we do that at Texas. We get nervous about a position group, and sometimes when the fall comes, that's not a problem at all, and it's another position group. So, and also there's a lot of psychology with Sark. Maybe he's trying to push that group by what he's saying, and stuff like that. So I don't know all that's going into the wide receiver thing. We have a talented squad, but it seems like they just haven't been able to put it together yet at wide receiver.
You touched on the defense to a certain extent. You lose your best player up front. You lose two prominent players in the NFL draft up front. And, of course, Caden Stearns in the defensive backfield. And then a plethora of undrafted free agents that will get to camps. So the defense, your thoughts about their progression at this point?
They look great. The whole scheme. I think defense, our run game is going to be, where we make our money on offense. But I really think overall as a team, it's going to be a defensive team this year. Offensive scheme takes a long time to implement, especially a complicated one like Sark's. So defense is naturally ahead because they have a simplified approach in their early install. So basically get in your spot and play. And offense doesn't have that advantage. So they looked a lot better. And as far as like defensive line, we did lose Osai, but I'm not worried there. Well, we've replaced there with, like a Broughton and a Collins and a Keandre at nose, Ray Thornton at an X-backer position, Jacoby Jones at Jack. We need a little bit more depth on the edges, and that's why you're seeing our transfers come in, like Ben Davis from Alabama and stuff like that. But once they get in, we'll be solid there. So our defensive line is really talented and more talented than it was last year, even minus Osai. And then our linebackers, we're still trying to kind of figure out there. They can bite on play action a little bit, but that's part of being young. And DeMarvion Overshone is also not in. He's hurt, and he's going to be our starting middle. And then our secondary is really talented. We have almost an embarrassment of riches there. I would feel totally comfortable with our second string corners and nickels playing in the game, just like a first string. So I really like what the defense has. It's simplified but confusing. So they're always dropping 4 under zone defenders and in a cover 3, right? So 3 up high, 4 under, but you never know which one of the players is going to be the 4 under. So sometimes they'll drop the X backer out to do that. Sometimes it'll be the will linebacker, but you're never going to have the same thing. And that simplicity is also what makes it really hard. And so you were seeing quarterbacks read. They couldn't get it, getting coverage sacks, getting nervous and running. And that's all due to the under coverage being confusing and constantly making young quarterbacks have to work. So I'm excited about defense.
You mentioned Overshawn having to sit out. Was it just the spring game or the entire spring session?
Yeah, he's going to have to sit out for a while. He injured his shoulder. I think it was still from last season, but they discovered it, and so he had to go through surgery, or will have to go through surgery. So he's going to be out for a little while. He's going to miss all the spring install.
So a ton of guys missed the spring game, as is pretty usual, just for precautionary considerations. But any other issues for anybody else that's an impact player headed toward August?
Jake Smith was out at inside receiver, broke his foot on the first day of spring. So, didn't really get much options there. And I think, too, that's probably why you hear receivers hurting a little bit. So Jake will come back as well. But as far as our big people out, Jake Smith at slot receiver, DeMarvion Overshown at middle linebacker.